After we move on from discrete modules of PLCs, which usually are the very first entry point because they're simple to understand, we then move on to what we call analog modules. Now there can be analog inputs and outputs, but probably the most common is analog inputs. So if you find a PLC with built-in analog, they'll usually be limited to analog inputs, or they'll have more inputs than they will outputs. But either way, it's the same. We're working with voltages that are varying between 0 and a full voltage. Now sometimes that comes across in the form of current. There's a few different strategies. 0 to 10 volts is very common. 0 to 20 milliamps is common. 4 to 20 milliamps is common. And for some systems, 0 to 5 volts is also very common. There are variations of these depending on what equipment you're working with, but that's the set of the ones that you'll find the most common. These modules come in different form factors. This module, or card, is on a printed circuit board that is inserted right into the front of the space in a PLC. This module has a DIN rail connector, and the DIN rail connector allows it to be connected next to the PLC, and then a wiring harness allows it to be slid and locked permanently into place. Other controllers, like this popular Arduino board, this includes 5-volt inputs, the 0 to 5 volt range, and they're built directly onto the board. Here behind me are a couple of examples of PLCs that also include both built-in and modular analog inputs and outputs. Since we have voltages and currents that can vary among a whole range, they're great for pressures, temperatures, and other variations which, instead of providing a switch that's above or below a certain point like a proximity sensor, these analog inputs give us more information about our system so that we can make better actions. Possibly a downside to those is that they're a bit more expensive and sometimes a little bit more difficult to operate. But in return, we want to be sure that the information that we're collecting about our system is thorough enough to be fully used to make the best system that we possibly can.